All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural Under the Influence webinar series. I am beyond thrilled to be kicking off the first Under the Influence webinar with my two guests today, which I'll get to in a second. But because it's inaugural, I have to say it's our new webinar series brought to you by Linqia, where we go under the hood on how brands influence consumers with impactful creator partnerships. We're going to walk through these conversations with tangible lessons on things you can walk away with to up-level your influencer marketing game. All right, then. So let's dig into Under the Influence of the Olympics. Who doesn't love the Olympics? Like, come on. And the Summer Games, stop it. Gymnastics, I got something for you. Who's ready for Paris? And who wants a croissant, right? So off to Paris we go. First, I have Yvette Michael joining me, and we have a very common past. We'll go back a long time ago when Yvette was in New York working at Fox and ESPN, but she's now a coordinating producer and senior athlete talent manager for the IOC's Olympics.com and Olympic Channel Services. Her first Olympic Games was back in 2000 in Sydney, which is so impressive. And Paris will be her 11th Games. Also joining Yvette, before I turn over the mic to her and our other guests to tell you a little bit about themselves before we jump into all of these juicy questions, is Mykayla Skinner. And we all know Mykayla for her amazing performance at the last Summer Games, where she stepped in for Simone Biles when she got the twisties. But that's part of her career, but it's not really her whole story. She's an Olympic silver medalist, and she burst onto the American gymnastics scene when she won the junior individual all-around title in 2011. At 24, she became the oldest. Can you believe that? I feel like an old maid now. The oldest Olympic gymnast since 2004, with the resilience and competitive spirit that brought her the reputation of this powerhouse performer and model teammate. Little powerhouse, packed in, doing all these flips and just being simply amazing, with a very storied journey in the gymnastics community, but I'll let her tell you more. So Mykayla, if you want to start out with an introduction of yourself, and then we'll kick it over to Yvette.
Yeah, so I'm Mykayla Skinner. I won the Olympic silver medal in the last Olympic Games on vault. I went as an individual specialist, so I wasn't part of the team. So I got to go for myself, but also got to represent Team USA. I am 27. I'm from Gilbert, Arizona, but now live in Utah with my husband and my 7-month-old daughter, Charlotte. So just becoming an influencer, a mom, doing all the things. It's weird not being an athlete anymore, but just living day-to-day life and continuing to chase my dreams in different areas.
Yvette?
Hi, I'm Yvette Michael. I grew up in a small, tiny town in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And when I was growing up as a child, I used to be the first to read the newspapers. I was a big Manchester United fan with my dad. I used to love the Olympics. And my first Olympic memory was in 1984. My dad had rigged up a TV so I could watch Flojo win her silver medal. Then go on to win 3 medals in Korea. But also in Malaysia, they used to show the franchise of ABC's Wide World of Sports, which had a great tagline that has always stuck with me: the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And when I would watch the Olympic Games, I would just fall in love with it. So I moved to America to go to college in 1991, knowing at that time that the Sydney Games were going to be held in 2000. And I went to college at George Washington, continued sort of my trajectory path in journalism, and sort of decided at a pretty quickly actually, that I somehow wanted to get to Sydney for the 2000 Olympics. To make a very long story short, despite a lot of trials and tribulation, I did end up working for Fox Sports. I was Diana Nyad's field producer. Everyone knows Diana Nyad now, thanks to the film on Netflix, Nyad, contributing to Keith Olbermann's show for Fox Sports. So that was my first Olympics. And since then, I have somehow managed to work at every games via various entities that I've worked for. And in 2016, the IOC was launching the Olympic Channel here in Madrid. And my former intern from the Athens game called me and told me about the opportunity. He knew I was in between jobs and suggested I take a look at moving to Madrid. And here I am.
So I'm like super jealous of everywhere you've lived and everything you've done. And I just want to say to everyone, clearly for this topic today, we have two true experts. And I love that we have Mykayla, who is an athlete, and once an athlete, Mykayla, always an athlete. So you are still an athlete in my eyes. And listen, I played basketball in college years and years ago, and I consider myself an athlete, so we can share that. And then, I mean, Yvette, come on. I don't think there's anybody out there that can bring the knowledge and depth that you can to the Olympics. So as we dig into influencer and talking about influencer and more about the Olympics, it gets a little muddy. Like, I remember back in my career and I worked on the Olympic Games, it's like, if you're not a sponsor, don't use the rings, don't say this, brands can't really align with athletes. And I think there's this rule called Rule 40 and the Olympic Charter that clearly says that the brands, how they can work with athletes and how they can't. So when we talk about the Olympics and athletes, like, are they influencers and what can they or can't they do? Mykayla, I'm going to start with you because I know you're now leaning more into this influential space and probably doing a ton and getting a ton of calls to brands to work with you, as Paris is, I think Yvette said, 96 days away.
I know, that is so crazy. I'm like, I feel like I just competed. It's gone by so fast. But yeah, it actually was really difficult for me because I was an alternate in the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro. So I didn't get to compete, but I went over there to, fill in case someone got injured. And after that, I just was like so done with elite gymnastics. I wanted to go pursue my collegiate career at the University of Utah and compete on their gymnastics team. So I competed there for 3 years. And then my junior year, my senior year, I decided to go and defer and go and train for 2020 Olympics. And doing that was kind of difficult because before NIL came into place with college athletes, I couldn't have any sponsors. I couldn't make any money because I was still wanting to go back and finish my senior year of college gymnastics. And it was just so hard because I couldn't use my name, image, and likeness to make money during that time when I was back in Arizona training with my club gym. And it was hard because my husband was working and I needed to help provide, but I couldn't because gymnastics was like my full-time job. And so it was really difficult. And then we kind of found out that NIL was coming into play. And at this point, with COVID being deferred a year with the Olympics, we couldn't compete for a whole nother year. And so I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to go back and compete my senior year at the University of Utah. So we decided to start a YouTube channel and we had money coming in from that. And it was really hard to tell my coaches at the U that I wasn't coming back to finish my senior year and that I'd already started taking money. And it just stinks because right after the Olympic Games, NIL came into place. And even though I started taking money right before then, if I wanted to go back and compete, I still couldn't. But it's weird because I've gone back to the U to talk with the girls and the athletes, and the coaches keep saying, you still have one more of eligibility. You should come back and compete for us. So it's like now it doesn't matter, but because it was before NIL came into place, I couldn't go back and, do gymnastics. So it was very tricky and very difficult and kind of devastating in some areas because I'm like, well, maybe I would have wanted to do one more year. But I'm also just excited that I've gotten to move on and enjoy my life. And I ended out on a very good note. But yeah, it's been tricky trying to navigate. And, it's hard now because I retired right after the Olympic Games. And I can't really have those big sponsorships like Nike and different things because they usually want athletes that are participating in athletics.
Yeah, and that's a great insight. And then Yvette, what is your perspective? So on the side of like reporting and working for an Olympic network, how do you see influencers kind of fitting in that potentially aren't working with brands that are Olympic sponsors?
Yeah, it's
Sure.
actually been, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So, no, no, sure. I was just going to say, Mykayla I hit the nail on 2 points, right? I think the entire landscape has been pre-COVID, pre-NIL, post-COVID, post-NIL. And I think there are definitely far more opportunities today in post-COVID, post-NIL than there ever has been for any athlete prior to this.
Mhm.
In the past, you maybe had a bank of 20 top tier athletes that every brand wanted to go after, right? Every brand wanted the same athletes, and that space was carved out between few. But now they are the elite, the big names that everyone chases, but there is the opportunity also for athletes to advocate for themselves
Mhm.
with brands, with thematic things that they may be interested in, with philanthropy programs that they may be interested in. And I find it's really, for me, it's been a great learning experience, being exposed to a large landscape of a variety of different athletes from different parts of the world who have very different interests that we all have access to. For
Mhm.
many years, just working and covering in the US, I can tell you, like, the markets that we would reach out to would be, the UK markets outside of the US, right? That were accessible were like UK, Australia, Canada, etc. If you wanted to get an athlete from India, from Israel, from South Africa, you'd have to. It took it was a very long journey for brands, for anyone to engage in them. But today, that is no longer the case. Today, you can go on social media, you can find anyone. You have the opportunity to engage with athletes from pretty much anywhere in the world via a DM, a text.
Mhm.
And I find that more brands are using the opportunity to be more diverse,
Mhm.
um, to to give equal opportunities to more athletes across the globe.
Yeah, and that's really the meat of it. So I'm a brand. I find Mykayla. I'm going to toss this question to you, Mykayla. So, and I find you, and I'm not an Olympic sponsor, but I want to work with you in the coming months. What are your tips, or sort of how would you think that we would partner together to sort of leverage this pop culture moment in time that's happening? And then obviously people are going to know that you're an Olympic medalist and that's going on at the same time. How do we partner together? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard because at the beginning of all this, I didn't have an agent or a manager. And so my husband was doing that for me. And it was really hard, to negotiate deals and to work with these companies, especially for me. I like to work with certain brands that I love that fit my platform, and being an Olympic athlete and inspiring, young girls and young athletes all over the world to never give up, because that's been my motto through my Olympic journey. And now that I have a manager and a publicist to help me navigate those areas, it definitely helps. And she can go over those things with me and can negotiate and go back and forth what, the best way to go about this collaboration is. So that's kind of how
Amazing.
I work on those things. It's really difficult to, manage yourself, because when I was doing it, it was too many things coming in. And I feel
Yeah.
like I maybe didn't say the right things, or maybe companies didn't want to work with me in that certain area like they thought. So just really
Mhm.
trying to find the best fit with all of it.
Great. So yeah, relevance, we hear that a lot. And the fit
Yeah.
needs to make sense, and it needs to, your target audience needs to benefit from the message you're putting out there. I love
Right.
that. Yvette, can you give us any examples when you talk about engagement and how brands are engaging with athletes, like examples of how that's done? Again, I'm trying to focus on the non-Olympic sponsors, because I think when it comes to the Olympic sponsors of the world, you know, they know what they can and can't do, but anybody else that's trying to enter into that space, have you seen any examples for that?
Sure. I mean, the Olympics, the IOC established the top partnership program in, I think, 1985, 86. And I think that allows global companies to become the main providers, right? So we currently have 14 top Olympic sponsors for the Paris Games. Many of them are names that most of you are familiar with: the Airbnbs, the Visas, Procter & Gamble's, Toyota, Omega. I'm missing a few, I'm sorry, but you know, the ones that most people are familiar with. But then there are many other brands that sponsor athletes as well. And usually, if you're not a direct competitor with the brand, there are Rule 40 rules that and brand and engagement rules that come out for every games that many athletes are able to work around. Not just athletes. I think everyone talks about athletes, forgetting that there are also NGBs, which are the non-governing bodies, and the federations, the international federations. NGBs have sponsors. USOPC has its sponsors. Federations have sponsors. So a good example would be last week I was at the Media Day for Team USA, where Ralph Lauren is a sponsor, right? So Ralph Lauren had its booth. We did all of that. With that said, you know, Nike also sponsors kit and gear. They follow the Rule 40 rules, right? The Rule 40 rules are not very difficult. Team GB is another perfect example. Team GB's kit is all Adidas, right? The brands work closely with the IOC's marketing and licensing departments to ensure that they are following the rules to allow the athletes to be able to do it. It's very interesting for me, because I remember when McDonald's was a sponsor and food was just a no, absolutely no, never, ever. Now it's interesting. In Japan, there were so many tiny little dessert and, you know, kitty catty and lots of little
mochi,
which I'd never seen before, never ever seen before. I was like, oh, this is new. So I think there are plenty of opportunities. Swimming is somewhere else. You know, guerrilla marketing is always a problem. I'm sure many of you remember, I think it was the Rio Games when Michael came out with his headphones that had beats on them. And then the next time he came out, he had tape on his, Michael Phelps, he had tape on the headphones. And so guerrilla marketing is always there and is never going to go away. And we're all very aware of that. I find it fascinating. You know, every games, I always sort of make a list in my head of like, oh, who's going to guerrilla market at these games? Because things change, right? Products change, brands change. But I think there is plenty of opportunity. I think it's a myth when someone says, if it's not a top sponsor, we've got no opportunities. I think there are ways that many brands have been able to work with TMS and work within the guidelines and do well for the NGBs, for the federations, and for the athletes.
I'm glad you say that, Yvette, because I think so many people get very scared, and I advocate for the athletes. I work in influencer marketing, and we want to use the athletes as influencers, and we want to get other brands involved. And I think you make a very salient point is there's a rule called Rule 40. Everyone needs to familiarize themselves with it. So we have a lot of people that are listening to us today, and they're like, Rule 40, what is that? Oh my God, what do I do? Shameless plug here, Linqia will be putting together a downloadable point of view on this topic. So anyone that's attending this call now or this webinar, we will make sure you get an emailable version for that. And, you know, as Yvette said, there's ways to work on things if you work within the parameters of those rules. So I'm going to shift a little bit to social media. And I see you smiling, Mykayla, because, you know, especially at 27, you're like, I'm 27 and I'm literally like times two. Hello. Not really, but you know, I'm like, yay, I wish I was 27. But you grew up in social media and you're an athlete throughout this whole process. So how is social media impacting the celebrity of athletes, and how maybe you could imagine one day when, you know, other athletes before social media didn't have that huge social following that you have, so you're not competing, but you're still have such a loud voice because of social media. So if you could talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, it's been super cool. And I mean, social media is hard, you know, especially coming just from being like an athlete and watching these athletes being able to like use NIL to help them build their platform, because we're not going to be athletes forever, right? Like eventually we're
Mykayla,
going
can
to,
you, I'm going to interrupt you for a second because
okay,
I just, it hit me. There might be people on the call that don't know what NIL is. So if you
okay,
could spend 2 seconds explaining that as you get into the answering social
okay,
media
okay.
question.
Yeah, so NIL came into play. I feel like I'm going to mess. I don't know what NIL stands for.
July
Do you
20,
guys?
July 2021, name, image, and license.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. So anyway, name, image, and likeness. So before, when I was in college, you couldn't make money off name, image, and likeness. And now the NCAA has changed that. And now athletes can make money off their name, image, and likeness, which I was like, oh, I wish I had that so bad in college, because there are just so many amazing athletes that couldn't use their platform and build it and be able to do these partnerships, which is like the best part of being an athlete, is getting to, you know, redeem these amazing successes that we have and being able to use these companies and, you know, to promote our platform and to help them with their businesses. So anyway, it's been really cool to watch all these athletes, especially now because a lot of athletes are doing Olympics and college, where before, especially in gymnastics, you kind of really couldn't do that. So it's been really awesome to see a lot of the girls that were on the Olympic team with me in 2020, and now they're doing college and are preparing for this next Olympic Games. So for me, it was really hard because I was known for being an athlete, right? And so transitioning into this whole influencer world has just been really different for me. And I've had to learn how to switch into this era. And I'm 27, so I'm obviously still pretty young, but it's definitely been different for me to learn how to do, you know, reels and all these things that you need to do now. Where before it was just kind of like, oh, you're an athlete, that's really cool, we want to work with you. But now it's kind of transitioned into where like, okay, we don't really care about how many followers you have, but the interaction and the engagement you're getting on reels and just different things like that. So it's definitely a transition for me, but it's been really fun to still kind of stay in the gymnastics world a little bit. You know, like you said, once an athlete, always an athlete. So I just want to help gymnasts and athletes all over the world, again, to remember to never give up and just to keep promoting that and just showing life. There's life after sports.
Nice.
Just becoming a mom and, you know, influencing and just showing people the things that I love and I care about. And it's been really cool to see these NIL athletes being able to do that through their collegiate careers. So it's been really cool to see how social media has changed. Again, being able to help many people, many athletes over the world, influencers, just to be able to even have jobs from home. And I think it's been really cool to see. And, you know, even with us doing YouTube, that's been really fun. And people's engagements. And we started YouTube back when I did my Olympic journey. We wanted to show people the behind the scenes of what an Olympic athlete goes through, because most of the time on social media, you might see just the good parts of life. You don't always see the nitty gritty, you know, horrible, depressing, hard moments that I wanted to show and show people that you can get through difficult things and that you can go and live your dreams. So YouTube has been an amazing platform for that and just showing our life and our family lifestyle. So anyway, there's just so many different platforms, so many different things you can use just to help you grow and to be able to work with these companies. So it's been really cool. Social media has been really helpful in my life in some good
Yeah.
ways.
Sounds like it's creating a lot of opportunity. And
Yeah.
if whoever's listening not following Mykayla yet, please do, because I've been checking it out and it's great. You go from curating gymnastic routines to actually becoming a content curator. So it takes time. I too
Mhm.
create reels and content, and I know what goes into it. So it takes a lot of time. But speaking of influencing, Yvette, I want to ask you something. Are you really seeing athletes using sport philanthropy as a way to influence?
Yeah, yes, definitely. I think one of the things that I'm most interested actually is the athletes that we don't necessarily pay a lot of attention to, who are doing great things in the world, not just in the US, that and don't usually have the opportunity. They've never had the opportunity to showcase what they have been up to until social media has made that more accessible to everyone, right? So I've got a few examples. Peter Tafatufa, who everyone remembers as the Tongan who carried the flag, right?
Yep.
We started working with Peter in Rio, right after Rio. And I remember he was so frustrated because every opportunity that came to him, for him, was very specific and related to what was visual at the Rio Games. And it wasn't necessarily what he wanted to do. He's someone of tremendous faith. He comes from a small island in Tonga that always is looking for help and needing help. He lives in Brisbane. He is obsessed with the water. There were many things that he was interested in sort of promoting or talking about besides, sunscreen sponsorships and, or suntan oil, right? And he was able to use that leverage that he had to form partnerships with
Mhm.
UNESCO, yeah, the United Nations, the OPEC department in the preservation of oceans, etc. When there was an earthquake down in the Fijian Islands a few years later, he was able to use his connections to help get some of the Starlink satellites over so that they were able to get connectivity quickly. He has been an ambassador in promoting sport within his small island. He's now building a Taekwondo academy. So I think that is one example of, someone who's really managed to leverage the small, tiny moment that he had, into a really like just a wonderful opportunity for him. With that said, there are also other athletes who have used, this very specifically just for sports philanthropy. I just recently did an event. There's an organization that I was paired up with, Girls Gotta Run,
Yes.
which is based in Ethiopia, and they were looking to bring more attention to the program that they had. We're looking to team up with marathon runners or Olympians who could perhaps advise some of these young scholar athletes that they had about the program. It was harder to reach out and be able to work with some of the bigger names. So we
Mhm.
went to a few smaller elite athletes and invited them to come. One thing led to the other. The event turned out to be really successful. It drew a lot of attention in Ethiopia, in Addis, from the media, and it brought together Olympians like Haley Geldabasi showed up at the
Mhm.
event, which then has led to additional people wanting to sort of be educated and support the organization. So I really think that opportunity is there, even in the US. I think it's going to be really interesting watching the US athletes
Mhm.
right now. Currently, many of them are using social media not just for the moment that they have now, but
Mhm.
looking ahead to think about, as Mykayla said, life post Paris.
Right.
And for many of them, right, Tokyo was their first games. Paris will be their second or last games.
Mhm.
And many of them are very aware of whatever it is they do that comes next. They will need this brand of theirs, their individual brand, to help promote whatever it is they want to do, whether it's a foundation, whether it's working with a nonprofit, whether it's partnering with an NGO or an organization, or whether it's building their own brand. I think Naomi Osaka is someone who's a perfect example. She was in Tokyo. She took that break. And when she took that break, she also started building her brand. Now she's a mother. Her brand has multiple verticals to it. A US athlete that we can talk to about that, the same example, is Allyson Felix, right? Allyson Felix has just done an incredible job building her brand, whether it's in apparel, with motherhood, her journey towards motherhood, and now with maternal care. So I just think that there are incredible opportunities to use social media besides just working with brands, to ensure you have sponsorship. I think there's opportunity to build on what you have for your future in everything that you may want to do next.
I agree. And honestly, with brands, they have, sort of philanthropic, the things that they do and that they support, and finding the right athlete that has shared values. Brands can lean in that way. So a brand, instead of going out and chest beating and say, we do this for sustainability and we do that, to support feeding America, it's let's partner up with an athlete that shares those values and actually execute something. So it's the way in which you design your partnerships with these athletes. And there's something else that you said that I think is important too. So you talk about elite athletes, or maybe athletes that are participating in the current games. What we see in influencer marketing is that and what influencer is doing and what social media is doing is it's really evening the playing field. And it's about who has the right content, like Mykayla said, who's producing the right content, who's telling the full story in front of it, behind the scenes, during. This is what people want, to have full access. So it's not just about, I'm the most popular athlete, I won all the gold medals. Like, sure, people are interested in that too. But influencer marketing and social media really sort of evens the playing field and allows everybody to come out there and partner with brands and tell a story and to do all of those things. And we do see that influencers of that caliber are really rising and becoming more attractive to consumers. And so is philanthropic, quite honestly. When we put out a philanthropic program, we do see an uptick in performance, for the programs that we're doing at Linqia. So, okay, I'm a brand.
If I could just add one thing, I think,
Please.
Everyone talks about the creator side of things, right? I think it's also very important to remember that you have a variety of different audiences. What may work for one person is not going to work for the next. And I always try, when athletes come to me struggling, or when people come to me to ask, to say, I can't do this and I can't do that, and it's not working the way it works for X athlete. And I always remind them that, find your niche. It may be small, but it will grow. Social media lets you do that, right? There is a place in the world for everyone, and there is an audience in the world for everyone. It may start with 5, but it will grow.
Coming from a producer, everyone. Anything to add to that, Mykayla? Because I saw you like,
yeah,
yes.
It's the same for me, because again, like I told you guys, I was known for an athlete. And so transitioning into like this different space, this different era, trying to figure out who I am as a person now and not being an athlete, like the Olympic silver medalist, Mykayla Skinner, now I'm a mom, I'm a wife. I love fashion and, all the above, all the fun things that I get to do and create now. And when I was talking to my new manager, it was so hard because I'm like, I just feel like I need someone to like make my content and help me like do all these things. And honestly, it's come down to like, it is time consuming. It is very hard, but I just post when I want to post. I post what I want to post. So it's real and authentic. I don't want someone to tell me what I should be making. I don't want to be fake. I want to be real, especially to all my fans and followers. And I think that's just made my life less stressful because I had so much anxiety and stress because I was like, I'm not posting enough. Do my followers even love this? And I think them just seeing the realness of what I've been doing, it makes me happy. I think they enjoy it. I've seen also a lot of people, um, again, like athletes, I feel like they're trying really hard because they're trying to mimic what other people are doing because they've seen them have that success. And even just with certain products, like I think it's more authentic and it comes off more real when you're actually partnering with a company that you love and that you actually use. Or when my manager comes to me, it's like, do you like this product? Do you want to try it before you even post about it? Because there's some products out there that I don't really like to promote, you know, and I think you can really see that when these athletes are promoting stuff, it's like they've never used it. It just doesn't come off as real and authentic. And I think sometimes it doesn't help those companies with the partnerships because, you know, they don't use it every single day and it just doesn't seem, you know, real. So I think that definitely helps when you're transitioning into this world is to use the product and sell it because you love it, not just because you're getting paid for it.
I love that advice. I love that advice. It's so fantastic. And for brands too, you want to work with people who actually love your product because the
Mhm.
message is going to be that much more greater. So, okay, I'm a brand. I'm on this call. I'm listening to this. How do I go about working with? How do I find an athlete? How do I go about working with somebody? What is my next step? Any advice from either of you?
I'm like, who wants to go first?
I mean, I
You
can
can
go
go.
first. I think you know, I love the idea of a scout, right? A scout goes to a baseball game, scouts around, for, you know, and I say today you've got the internet in front of you. Like everything is accessible. Don't go. I mean, if one more person tells me I've Googled top 10 athletes to work with, it just makes me throw my hands up in the air. I'm like, you're going to get the same 10 names, right? If you know the niche, if you know the product, if you know the messaging, you know, it's very easy to put in a few keywords and you will come up with many different names and many different opportunities to engage with people. You know, drop them a note, say, you know, hey, you know, I am, I don't know, a cotton candy maker, and I see you've got 4 girls, and, you know, I was wondering if, you know, you'd like to take them all to the carnival this weekend and have some cotton candy. That's a bad example, but, you know, what I mean is like, have these organic, authentic, as you were saying, conversations, and it's not, you just need to put in a little bit of work, but I think the opportunities are there. I'm very interested looking ahead to LA, the LA Games, because we're going to have 5 new sports at the LA Games, right? So we're going to have 5 new sports, which means everyone's going to have to think about lacrosse and flag football and squash and cricket, and I can't remember the 5th one, which is bad. But yeah, but you see what I mean. I think you know what you know what the 5
Yes.
sports are now, right? Pay attention to college lacrosse, see who's
Yes.
interested in what. Pay attention to cricket and all these little leagues. Pay attention to squash. Pay attention to flag football. Steve Young, right, gets out of the booth and is coaching his girls flag football team. Like there are stories there to be told.
Agreed.
So I think, you know, you just need to be a little bit aware. And I think it's also important, like for all of us who've had to adapt in this new world post-COVID, I think brands and marketers also need to learn to adapt to this brand new world of athletes post-nil, post-COVID, athletes who engage differently, who have different values. I think all of that's really important. So everyone needs to learn to adapt to this new world that we're coming in.
You want to add anything to that, Mykayla?
First, 5 new sports. Like that is awesome. Like I want to go do flag football. Is there a
No.
women's team for that? That is awesome.
I thought she was going to say pickleball, because all I hear is like pickleball is like the next rising sport.
Yes.
So I'm waiting for you to tick off pickleball.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll get in there at some point. I mean, she kind of hit everything perfectly. I mean, again, like at the beginning, me and my husband were doing a lot of responses through social media and DMs. And then I think it is really helpful to get a manager, an agent. We have her email just right in my bio, so that's easy for people to reach out there. But again, I think reaching out to anybody and everybody, I mean, the worst that happens is you say no, or sometimes I like to even reach out to companies that I love, and I'll just send them a little DM and say, hey, do you guys do any collabs or partnerships? Like, I would love to try your product, or I love your stuff. So I think both ways helps a ton, just by me reaching out or them reaching out to me. But I just say use it all. Like, again, the worst they can say is no. And just build your platform, build those relationships with those companies, and it's going to go a long way. So definitely get that email in your bio, because it will help for sure to build those relationships. So
Yeah, and great advice on all fronts. And I will add one more tip. If a brand is looking to partner up with athletes or influencers, and athletes that are influencers, they should call Linqia because we will make that connection for you. I know, shameless plug, but I had to. But I have one more question. It's the same question for each of you. Is there a favorite memory that you have, or something that you've seen of a brand getting it right? A brand partnering up with an Olympic athlete, whether it's a current athlete, a former athlete, retired, and you're like, oh, they really nailed that and did something pretty cool.
Sure. You want to go first?
you go. I'm thinking.
Okay. I have two memories. I have two. One's a top sponsor, one's not a sponsor. One's
Good.
not a top brand. So I thought I'd give you two examples. Yeah. So the first one is, I truly love this. I love the Procter and Gamble "Thank You, Mom" ads. I look forward to them. I think it was London Games, and then they did them again for Rio. I fell in love with them, and I love them. And I remember, like, if I was having a bad moment, I'd go watch them again, because it was so organic. It was like just superb in just telling the everyday stories of what happens in a home with an athlete. Didn't matter what the narrative was, right? And the support that they get organically at home. Parents make sacrifices, mothers make sacrifices, siblings make sacrifices. And those thank you ad moms, I think it was Wyden and Kennedy who did them. I love them. And I don't know what their plans are for Paris, but I certainly hope there's a thank you mom element to it, because I will be looking forward to it. Then I will also admit that my favorite partnership of all time is one that's very near and dear to me, because my first games, I was lucky enough to see Phelps swim in Australia. And in 2016, Under Armour put out the Rule Yourself Michael Phelps ad with music by The Kills for Last Goodbye. Yes. I honestly tell you, I think I listened to it 100 times a day and cried 80 times a day. I love that ad. I love it. I think that ad speaks to the journey that every athlete and Olympian goes through, whether it's a one-time Olympian or a five-time Olympian, whether it's someone who just made it to the trials and didn't make it to the games. That ad, that song, that 30 seconds, every time I listen to it, I am inspired, I am thankful, and I think it was just Under Armour did a beautiful job with that. So those are my two.
Very good. Very, 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 very good ones. And
Well,
I do enjoy. Thank you,
oh,
Mom, as
sorry.
well. Sorry, no, go ahead, Mykayla.
So I had thought of that one because I was thinking of Under Armour. So I think we had filmed ours. I was in an Under Armour commercial back in, it might have been 2015. It was somewhere before 2016 Olympic Games. And I thought it was just really cool, motivational. And there was three of us gymnasts that were in it. And also the Michael Phelps one, because they kind of came out around, maybe, well, was it the same? I don't know. Did that one come out around the Olympics? You said 2016? I can't remember.
It was his last goodbye. It came out like the week before his last few swims. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I
Anyway,
remember the ad you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But anyway, I loved the Michael Phelps one, so I was going to mention that one, but also the one that we were in. It was just what puts you in the dark. I feel like I'm going to mess it up now because it's been a long time, but it's like, or what you do in the dark puts you in the light or something. Anyway, we were in the Under Armour commercial, and it was just really cool. I absolutely love Under Armour, especially being a Utah athlete. We were sponsored by Under Armour at the University of Utah. And then before, we had all that, USA Gymnastics kind of went under, and the Larry Nassar stuff. We used to be sponsored by Under Armour. So anyway, Under Armour is great, and what they have made through their videos with different athletes and the inspiration behind it has been my favorite.
Yeah. What I love most about the Olympics is it's sport, but it is the true demonstration of how sport brings everything together. It's not just you have to be an athlete or you have to be a fan of a certain sport to engage and participate. It really goes across very, 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 very many walks of life, and speaking of brands, very many different products. So from P&G, who's doing CPG products and they're things that you're using in your household, to Under Armour, that is more of an athletic brand, to cars and all of these other things. I love how all these brands come together and really make it a reality and really do what I was talking about before, and like evening the playing field and making it all about lifestyle and society and philanthropy and all of those wonderful things. And that's why I really truly am looking forward to the Olympic Games, because it always brings that unity of people and society together. And I'm looking forward to what brands deliver, what athletes deliver, and all of the great production that comes out of it. Are there things that you're looking forward to that you wanted to close on before we depart?
I think it's just been really cool to see the Ralph Lauren photo shoot. I was like, man, could they have done that last time? I want to be in a Ralph Lauren photo shoot. Like, I love Ralph Lauren. Their stuff's so cute. Like all the Olympic stuff we got in the apparel from the last Olympics was like my dream. I was like, oh my gosh, just living in it. But it's been really cool to see, these sponsors and these athletes that get to participate in it. I feel like for me, just being in the Olympics in 2020, I guess 2021, but we didn't really get to do much of that stuff just because of COVID, which was such a bummer. So it's been really fun to watch these athletes get to live in that moment and have the excitement leading up to the games. So anyway, it's just so cool. And like you said, like when I was at the Olympics, we didn't get to stay in the village just because of COVID. They kept us in a hotel, but we did get to go visit twice. But just the unity, like all the different countries, like you really do just come together. And even though, like, of course, we're fighting for an Olympic medal, we're fighting for that spot. But at the same time, like, you feel like you're fighting together as a team and as a family. And it is just like the coolest thing to experience and to go through. And I wish I could do it one more time, but I wouldn't have traded for the world. That experience was amazing. And I'm just so grateful that I had the opportunity to do that. And, I know I filled in for Simone. But that's just not my whole story. I got to go and I got to compete, and I got to go out there for myself and win that silver medal that I've dreamed for ever since I was a little girl. So anyway, I'm so grateful for the life lessons I've learned, the partnerships I've made, the families that I've created, and the life ever relationships that I'll have. So anyway, thank you for having me. This has been so cool. And I hope this can help all of you guys with your content and creating and those partnerships?
For me, I think these particular games, I'm very interested to see how athletes become creators of their own brand. I think we're going to see a lot of that at these games. I have this very vivid memory. I hate to bring up Phelps again, but here am I. But in Rio, I remember being in the village and I was like running around, and in walked Michael Phelps this way, and in walked Novak Djokovic the other way, and they both stopped. They both had never met each other in person. They both took pictures of each other and shook hands and made their way. And I was thinking about this in just thinking about today, and I was and thinking about athletes as creators. It's only been, it's not that long ago, but these games are going to be very different because of social media, because Paris is so widespread, and these games are going to be very different. I think they're going to be very different. And I think everyone, it's a decentralized games as well. So I think social media and digital media is going to be a way that many people connect while everything is so decentralized, right? So I'm very curious to see how athletes use this opportunity to become their own creators, to create their own stories, to tell their own brands, and what comes out of it. I do think it's going to be a beautiful experience and a new experience. I think that's what everyone needs to not be afraid of, that it's going to be a new experience for everyone.
Yeah. And to the brands out there, how will you fit into the Olympic Games, and how will you partner up with these athletes and become part of the story and part of the conversation? Like I said, Linqia is putting out a point of view. It's a downloadable version. We will be sending it around, and also putting that out on LinkedIn and social media for you to download and take a look at it. But I want to say thank you so much to both of you. Incredible knowledge. It was so fun talking to both of you, and it makes me even more excited for the games and looking forward to it, because I just think it's going to be so much fun and so interesting. This was our first episode of Under the Influence, and you will forever be my first webinar participants. Yes, so super excited for that. And I just want to say thanks again, and thanks you to everyone who tuned in to listen to us today.